Hello, and I'm Ross from Britain's Hidden History. Welcome back. That was Zavi just playing us in with some traditional music to get us in the mood, and we're talking about Artorius Rex, the next part, and we're moving on to the heroic age. This is the real sort of zenith, the high point, when you're looking at a lot of Welsh history, and the part that really gets rubbished, even though it's the bit with tons of physical evidence to support it. And of course, this is the era made most famous by King Arthur, who in this case is King Arthur II of Glamorgan and Gwent, okay? Just give an idea here, these are the kings we're talking about. The one with the big star, he's the famous one, King Arthur II, alright? The great war leader. You might not actually been king for that long, due to the fact that his father, Meirig here, King Meirig, ruled for such a long time into his old age. But as it touched on before, with the British kings of that time, it wasn't a case of your father dies, you become king. It can be passed down at some point. You'd effectively retire and go off, and in this instance, Meirig seems to retire quite young, probably because of an injury. And he's continued sort of the administration role and keeping the kingdom ticking along, while Arthur can go off and be the Uther Pendragon, fighting his battles, etc. So, who was actually king is a little bit of a moot point. They seem to be a bit of a double act. And Meirig lived such a great age, he might even have outlived Arthur, which I think is part of the confusion. And I'm going to read some of the parts now quickly from Wilson and Blackett, from the book Artorius Rex. Right, so King Taithfalt, who we see here, who will be the great-grandfather of Arthur. See, Arthur, father's Meirig, grandfather Tudrig, great-grandfather Taithfalt. So King Taithfalt would have been a contemporary of Emrys Redig, who's known as Ambrosius Aurelian, as his Latin name. And he was the military leader appointed to drive out and subdue the Saxons. His father Taithrin, just off the map there, would have been alive at the time of the usurper Gwythern, or Vortigern, or Treherne even, and the upheavals which took place in what is now England. These British kings reigned during the era roughly 470 to 800 AD, and are the rulers of the popular British legends. So let's go through some of them here. My mouse doesn't seem to come out, which is a shame. I've got this big one, but the top left you've got King Tudrig, who married Gawain, when it was founded, what was known as Govan, in Glasgow, let me come on to the Welsh that another time, Glasgow. But anyway, that's Govan, his wife. Seems to have married twice. Anyway, so King Tudrig, who's known as Theodoric, is his sort of Latinized name. He was the first Uther Pendragon. Uther means sort of the mighty or successful. Then you got Pen is the head, the leader, the chief, and a dragon is a general. So a Pendragon is like a generalissimo, is the word that's often used. You can look all these words up in the old dictionaries, okay? Uther, sometimes spelled U-T-H-R without the Y, okay? Right, so anyway, Tudrig's very famous because he was mortally wounded at Tintern. He's the one who's defending the crossing when Meirig was driving the Saxons out of the land. And he's buried at Mathen. He's got a stone coffin. He's twice excavated, once in 1625 and in 1881. Then we got Meirig, the father of Arthur. So he was the second Uther Pendragon. What would happen? He'd have all these kingdoms around Britain with their own kings, their own armies, but then a high king, an Uther Pendragon, would be appointed in times of crisis. Obviously, this was one of those periods with the Anglo-Saxons encroaching. And those high kings always seem to have come from the Glamorgan Gwent area. It's interesting that this dragons as generals doesn't get mentioned very often. So you've even got the Gwent dragons rugby to this day. So Meirig, or Maurice, as he's also known, he was the second Uther Pendragon. He's credited with building Llandaff Church, and he's buried there in the cathedral, so you can go and see where he's buried. So well attested in all sources, the stone of Brochweil is his brother in Cornwall. So then we got the famous King Arthur, which most of the book is about, so I won't say too much. But he's the legendary Round Table King. Where he's buried, now, it says here the Cave of Pavilions in the Forest of Mystery. You can see one of our videos when we go to the cave, but that was a temporary burial. At this stage, back in 81, Wilson and Blackett were still keeping some cards close to their chest and don't actually reveal where the final burial place is, which we think we've nailed since then, but there we go. So the stones of his brothers, Powell and Idnerth, are at Merthyr Mawr and Llandewi Brefi. Herioc is interesting. He's a kind of a shadowy figure. I find it hard to find out too much more about him. But anyway, he outlived Arthur, and he reigned after King Arthur's death until Arthur's son, or possibly his grandson, because Arthur's first son, Nowi, died very young in battle. Another great story we'll get onto. And it could be his son that Arthur adopted. Or it can be a nephew, but Morgan was the next descendant. This is one of the problems with the Welsh when they say Morgan ap Arthur, could be son, nephew, successor, grandson. Anyway, Morgan, he's now he's Margam Abbey, he's named after him. He's got a Cardiff accent, that makes sense, see, because the name Morgan said like that, Morgan, which is like the same as Margam, alright? So he's said to be buried there. Morgan was an infant when his father died. He's referring to Arthur here. He might be double unlucky because his original father might have died as well. Anyway, number 6 on your picture there. Ooh, I can't see 6 on it, but Ithael is the next one. Hang on. Right, okay, King Ithael ap Morgan. He's again well attested in the charters. It is possible that he is the King Ithael, named on a Llanilltyd Fawr stone rather than his uncle. So then we got King Rhys, another well-recorded king, named on a stone cross at Llanilltyd Fawr. That's the place that's mutilated into Church of the Twit, Llantwit Major. Llanilltyd Fawr, the Church of Illtyd, the large one. The small Llanilltyd is very near to where I live, and I've actually got my Llantwit socks on to keep my feet warm, my rugby socks. Anyway, the last one there, another King Arthur now, King Arthfael, Arthur III, is said to have married Cenhedlon of Powys. Actually, the brother of King Howell and King Meurig, who is misnamed as his son. Now this, because of some of the confusion, because his name's Arthur as well. Why you can have 8 or 9, actually, if you look at it closely, Henrys in England, but everyone goes bonkers over there being more than one Arthur in Wales, is another one of those mysteries, okay? There's quite a few Arthurs. It's working out which one's which is the hard thing, not finding them, alright? And one of the criticisms is thrown quite often, that Arthur's not thing, he was the King of Dyfed, or he was this guy, or... Yeah, there are other Arthurs, alright? Don't let that confuse you. So anyway, he was... this is probably the King Arthur who defeated the army of Rodri Malwanog at Pencoed, that's Bridgend, in 721 AD. This king is said to be buried at St. Margaret's Church in Cardiff. Alright, so the chart we exhibit here only contains the names of the major princes. These rulers held the throne during the upheavals of the Germanic invasions and wars beginning around 450 AD. At the end of their period, around 800 AD, the Heptarchy, the seventh of 7 kingdoms, had emerged in England, and the 5 confederated states coexisted within Wales. This pattern was about to be violently disturbed by the Danish Viking invasions of England and Ireland. So here we are. We're going to get on to more stuff about how Wales is divided and the fortress and stuff. Hope you can join us for that. And I hope you enjoyed this one. So until the next time, Herioc.